I would now like to call Ms. Swati Upadhyay, speaker of today's evening, to present her views and opinions on the topic Wars and Strategies in Ancient and Medieval India. Ms. Swati, stage is all yours.
Good evening and thank you everyone to being present here. Teachers, faculty and my dear friends, myself Swati Upadhyay from Shyam Lal College evening. In today's talk, my topic is wars and strategies in ancient and medieval India. The distinguished history of Indian army dated back more than 10,000 years. The two grand epics of Ramayana and Mahabharata constitute the fundamental framework around which the edifice of Indian army is built. The massive war Mahabharata, fought at Kurukshetra in northern central India, has left indelible imprints on Indian psyche. Fought relentlessly for 18 days in the quest of peace, the forces level described in epic state 18 Akshavanis, 7 with Pandavas and 11 with Kauravas, amounting to nearly 40,000 assorted troops fighting on elephants, chariots, horses and foot soldiers. Though innumerable wars have been fought thereafter, most were in quest of universal peace and dharma. Recourse to arms was only taken when peace was threatened. In fact, the word peace forms the very core of Indian philosophy, which can be most aptly be traced to one of India's ancient scripture known as Yajurveda. It started in verse, the English translation of which reads, "May the sky be peaceful, may the earth be peaceful, may the atmosphere be peaceful, may eternal peace come on upon us." But wars was the mean chief by which territories was annexed or rulers defeated in ancient India, which was divided into multiple kingdoms and empires. Often one empire predominated other or different empires coexisted. The Vedic literature, the two epics Ramayana and Mahabharata, Kautilya's Arthashastra, Banbhat's Harshcharitra, all key texts regarding warfare in ancient India testifies to it. Now, moving toward Vedic age. Vedic age and its natures of war and armaments there, since we don't have much evidence of such regarding Indus Valley civilization. With the advent of Aryans, or at the time of early Vedic period, there was tribal system of government in which military elements was strong. The tribal groups which were fought at that time were Gana, Shradha, Grama and Vrata. There were many communities and forest tribes called Atavikas that were known for their military skills and prized as such. Such peoples lived by profession of arms called Ayudhyajivi. Village providing soldiers were called Ayodhya. Mercenaries also existed in large number. They were recruited whenever required. Aryans fought battle for their cattle, as it was an important source of wealth and livelihood at that time. But at the time of later Vedic period, wars were fought for the throne, and with the rise of Mahajanpadas, there were rise of towns, and these towns were run by kings. Here the question came, who ascended the throne and become the next king or emperor? A king or emperor was supposed to be a great warrior capable of vanquishing enemies on the battlefield and subduing their kingdoms. The idea of Digvijaya, victorious campaign in all directions, so that a ruler could become a Chakravarti Samrat, emperor whose chariot wheel rolls unobstructed, was always emphasized. Hindus favored war as a mean of furthering royal ambition and even advocated the concept of dharma yodha, to avenge injustice or claim one's justified right to the throne. Buddhist and Jainism, despite their advocacy of non-violence, and understood the role of war and warfare in prevailing political system, and especially for the defense of one's own kingdom, invaders embarked on Digvijaya. The Magad Emperor Bimbisar was assassinated by his own son Ajatashatru. After that, he faced many rivalries. So to tackle these rivalries, he started fortification and used two innovative war engines like You can see in PPT, first on the right side, it was Rath Musla. A revolving mast was attached with the chariot, and on the left side, Mahashila Kantak. It was a flexible platform to catapult stones over our enemy. After the death of Ajatashatru, there was a ruler named Dhanananda. It was believed that he possessed one of the strongest army in the world. He is also known as the empire builder of Indian history. Greek historian Plutarch wrote that in Dhananand's army there were 2 lakh foot soldiers, 20,000 horsemen, 2,000 chariots, and 3,000 elephants. The next ruler, Chandragupta Maurya, established Mauryan Empire. In the, according to Megasthenes, the ambassador of Seleucid Empire, Chandragupta Maurya built an army consisting of 30,000 cavalry, 9,000 war elephants, and 6 lakh infantry. His military was administered by 6 tiers: infantry, cavalry, elephants, chariots, navy, and the last one is logistics and supplies. Infantry was armed with long bows made of bamboos and a single or double handled bow sword. In between these wars, there was foreign invasions, which changed the nature of conflict. Like in 326 BCE, Alexander came to India to expand his territorial reign. So we had evidence of war between Porus, king of Punjab, and Alexander in Battle of Khyber Pass. And if we see the contemporary time, there was wars fought between Iranians and Greeks for the supremacy of the world. The Mauryan emperor Ashoka also did not disband his army but continued to maintain efficient means for security of his people, which he considered as a part of his duty as a Buddhist ruler looking after the welfare of his subjects. So in ancient time, the last but not the least war was the War of Kalinga. It was the greatest war fought at that time. It was the war fought between Mauryan Emperor Ashoka and the state of Kalinga, an independent feudal kingdom located on eastern coast in present-day Odisha and northern part of Andhra Pradesh. It was fought on the bank of Daya River. It was the largest and the deadliest battle of that time. Therefore, the North India have been generally the seat of vast empire under the monarchy claiming to be universal suzerains and reducing their neighbors to fiduciary vassalage. Now let us talk something about the army. As you can see in the pictures, the ancient Indian army used wooden battles, chariots as commanding wheel and prized for their mobility, as they would carry archers who could shoot while moving throughout the battle. Yoked with 2 or 4 horses, these vehicles could easily mow down enemy infantry but could be used only in the plains and not for surprise attacks. This is the reason by the beginning of 6th century BCE, elephants replaced the chariots as the elite arm. They acted as commanding vehicle and providing shock value to the enemies, that is psychological impact on enemy. In India, elephants were first used in Battle of Khyber Pass. The commanding structure of army include the emperor or king as the supreme commander, followed by Crown Prince Yuvraj and the general or commander-in-chief Senapati. Below that were the superintendents of various arms known as Rashtadhyaksh for chariots, Gaja Adhyaksh for elephants, Ashwa Adhyaksh for cavalry, and Pata Adhyaksh for infantry, and admirals, Navy Adhyaksh in case of navy. The various sources which tells us about the ancient wars and warfares were P.C. Chakravarti's The Art of War in Ancient India, History of Ancient India by Rama Shankar Tripathi, and many more. So the Southern Empire, Southern India, Western India, and Eastern India, mostly situated on the sea coast, relied heavily on the maritime trade and the sea and the built navies that were used in the wars. It was in these areas India saw most of its naval warfare in practice. In these wars, ships played an important role. It was used to conquer islands, as has been presumed for the campaign of Gupta Emperor Samundragupta, or for fighting seafaring peoples as Satavahanas did in in first and second century. The Southern Empire, except a few short periods, has been described into small isolated kingdoms, each confined to its own corner and unable to prevent any unified opposition to a foreign invader. Vast cavalry forces can easily sweep them. Now, by entering into medieval India, there were many Turkish invasions which changed the nature of war, which replaced the weapons, which introduced the new techniques of war. The Turkish invasion of India from Mahmud of Ghazni onwards have followed this uniform pattern, and the result has always been the same. India's final weakness against smaller but superiorly equipped, mounted and lead bodies of invaders. The Ghazni ruler gained Kabul, and from Kabul as the base, the Turkish horsemen with some Afghan followers attracted by the hope of plunder. They were mounted arts and spearmen. These invaders were accompanied by a band of Afghans. In arms, the arms and the horses gave them indisputable military superiority over India. The Cambridge medieval history tells us about the Turkoman horses, is the noblest in whole of Central Asia and surpasses all other breeds in speed. And the horses had marvelous sense of loyalty. By Gauri Sultan began his invention of Hindustan, a great change had taken place in the social organization of India. Now we had Rajput and Kshatriyas holding the rural places all over the country, from Satluj to Son. But the Hindus' army was much smaller at the time and were lagged in unity and unification. In 1170, Ghurid ruler Muhammad Ghori was defeated by Gujarati ruler Bhim Salanki. Then he fought two consecutive battles with Prithviraj Chauhan in 1191 and 1192. So by this time onwards, Turks got a gateway to enter into India. Likewise, likewise, this when Delhi Sultanate was established in India. The conflict of interest changed between Hindu rulers and Islamic sultans. Now, these sultans fought for the establishment of their empire. There were five dynasties ruled over Delhi Sultanate subsequently: the Mamluk dynasty, the Khilji dynasty, the Tughlaq dynasty, the Sayyid dynasty, and the last one is the Lodi dynasty. The sultans of Delhi were perfect autocrats, and their source of authority was their military strength. The sultans were commander of force, chief lawgivers, and the final court of appeals. The titles of amirs, khans, and maliks were a military gradation to them. The army consisting of infantry, cavalry, and elephants. A sort of mechanical artillery consisting of various crude machines like manjaniks, mangos was used. As you can see in PPT, there is a picture of manjanik on the left side, and on the right side there is a picture of weapons which were used at that time. Delhi sultans took different reforms to strengthen and equipping their armies. Like Iltutmish, his army was centrally recruited, paid, and administered. Balban, during his reign, he faced Mongol threat. So to tackle these threats, he used two-pronged strategy. First, he exchanged embassies by Mongol courts, and secondly, he created two defense lines. He recognized the central military department, that is, Diwan-e-Arz, in order to strengthen the monarchy. He also took reforms to increase the power and prestige of Arz-e Mamlik, Chief Justice. As you can see in PPT, there were many departments, and the head of all the departments is Sultan. So we have an idea that from this time onward, departmentalization of military had started. Moving forward, at the time of Alauddin Khilji, he introduced cash payment to soldiers. There were direct recruitment of soldiers by Arze Mamlik and maintenance of record of army recruited. He also introduced the concept of dag, branding of horses, and hulia or chera, descriptive roles to the soldiers. His army include three grade soldiers: foot soldiers, soldiers with one horse, and soldiers with two horses. An interesting factor about Alauddin's army organization is still followed, and his cantonment model is still in use. And the last ruler of Delhi Sultanate, Firoz Shah Tughlaq. Delhi sultans were perfect autocrats. They also had standing armies. The standing armies of sultan cons- consisted of royal bodyguards and the troops of the capital, the contingents of nobles, walls, and the iqtidars. The concept of standing army was adopted from Europe. The Sargans of Agade, the first conqueror of Sumerian city of Mesopotamia, is generally believed to have formed the first standing army of some 1 lakh soldiers. But Indians were never back behind. According to Pliny the Elder, the Nanda Empire in ancient India also maintained a large standing army. The empire employed 2 lakh infantry, 20,000 cavalry, and 3,000 elephants and 2,000 chariots at its peak. So the period of Delhi Sultanate was different from the next epoch to our history, which is called the Mughal Empire. Mughal Empire from 1526 to 1738. North India enjoyed a stable and centralized form of government which spread over the part of Deccan and also kept the feudal vassalage under control. Mughals used firearms in the wars and began to import European arts and techniques and prepared the way for downfall of native sovereigns. The standing army of Mughals include Ahadis, place guards, and gatekeepers. The Ahadis were important troops which were directly recruited by emperor itself. The army and the wars and the readiness for wars were essential element in shaping Mughal emperors politically, socially, and culturally. Books like books like Mughal Empire at War from 15,000 to 605 by Andrew de la Graza tells us that India during Mughal period in much way paralleled parallel to the modern European in military revolution. Military revolution theory says that a series of radical changes in military strategies and tactics during the 16th and 17th century resulted in major lasting changes in government and society in Europe. It was introduced by Michael Robert in 1950s. As India started adopting new technologies and tactics during Mughals, military revolution also affected it. The career of Babur, the founder of Mughal emperor, recounting his growth as a commander and his eventual adoption of new technology and tactics made him a strong emperor. Technology played an obvious role in Mughal military transformation. Now, military includes traditional implements of Central Asian warfares along with warfares, bows, blades, armors, and horses with new devices, as you can see in pictures, muskets, cannons, bombs, rockets, and ships. The Mughals were not simply imitators of Western designs, but informed consumers, able to grasp the full importance and implications of gunpowder weaponry. Guns became an elite part of Mughals' elite culture and identity. It would be wrong to assume that Babur introduced a gunpowder warfare system because mounted archery remained a vital part of his army. Babur's empire did not last long. and the Mughal Empire collapsed with the explosion of Humayun. But Mughal Empire founded by Akbar in 1556 proved more stable and enduring. Akbar reconstructed the army and introduced a new system called Mansabdari system. Therefore, the essential structure of Mughal army started from the reign of Akbar. It was a ranking system of government officials and determined their civil and military duties along with their remuneration. So these measures made the Mughal Empire and its military more strong. But by the time of Aurangzeb, military of Mughals were declined. The Mughal Empire had no regimental structure. In this system, military officers worked for the government who were responsible for recruiting and maintaining his quota of horses. Babur and Akbar were forefront of artillery revolution. Despite all the success of Mughal armies to expand their domain, not just their battlefield victorious, but their mastery of new technologies and complex systems and the translation of knowledge into political power. Many of their later critics remained unimpressed. In comparison to the achievement of their contemporaries in early modern Europe, the pioneer of true military revolution, their work were found wanting. Now, just take a look of military revolution of Mughals. There were there were six components of Mughal military revolution: infantry, combined arms, artillery, fortification, sea power, and community of arms. This framework is used in exploring just how and why Indian military institutions evolved so differently from their Western equivalents. The Military Revolution, Military Innovation and the Rise of West, 1500 to 1800, Geoffrey Parker, publisher of books, argued the four features of military innovation transformed Europe warfare, providing the foundation of rise of West. There are use of cannons, muskets, and bows in the army of Mughals. So, Mughal played an important and essential role in establishing a strong military system in India. Keeping in mind the time limit, I would like to restrict myself telling about more about it. Next time, I will talk about the modern India's weaponry and wars. So, with this, I would like to conclude my talk. The reasons why I chose this topic was that I just wanted to give my views and ideas about ancient and medieval history, wars and warfares, the weapons used in it, and the changes it go through. As time changed, technology developed throughout history. So wars, weapons have also changed with it. In ancient time, we used chariots, elephants, infantry, squads for the wars. But if we compared it with modern time, everything has changed up. Nowadays, we use missiles, guns, rifles, machine guns, tanks, and many other armaments to tackle the threat. Now we have proper now we have proper armed forces for land, air, and water with a proper organizing machinery. So with time, history has been changing, but the style and the reason of wars remain the same. As in ancient India, we fought for territory and peace. Today itself, we fight for peace and territory. Thank you everyone for listening me patiently. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Swati. That was really a wonderful talk. You explained history of military in a very efficient way. Now, keeping time limits in mind, we have some questions from our audience. So I'm gonna ask them one by one. So the first question is from Mr. Shaurabh Singh, and he is asking, do you think that Navy as an important force had been neglected by the Indian rulers and which resulted into a subjugation by different European powers? Ms. Swati?
Yes, Yes, Saurabh, you can say that it was neglected since most of the invasion was from northwest. So the rulers were not so much prepared for navy. Uh, they were invasions which were from the passes. For example, Balban Pass, Khyber Pass invasions were from the western part of India. तो द नेवी दैट इज द रीजन कि जो नेवी की रेलिवेंस थी वो उस टाइम पे बहुत डिक्लाइन थी और यही एक रीजन है कि जो क्या बोलते हैं यूरोपियंस को मौका मिला इंडिया में आने का.
Okay, Miss
Uh,
Swati.
may I comment?
Yes, sir.
Diwakar, after the discussion, the four
Okay.
or three or four questions, and whole floor
Okay.
is yours.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Miss Swati. Next question is from Miss Nikita, and she is asking: were there any evidences of war we see in Harappa period?
There is no such evidence. If we decipher to Harappan script, then maybe we will have some evidence. Right now, we don't have any written evidence of it.
Okay, next question is from Mr. Ashish Singh, and he is asking: do you think that continuous wars broken the notion of India being a peaceful state? And was India ever a peaceful state?
Yes, India was always a peaceful state, and right now also it is a peaceful state. We never attack by ourselves. If someone is provoking us, then we attack on them. It is also
Okay,
hmm, yeah, yeah.
okay, and the last question, which is from Mr. S.M. Jha, and he is asking: how was the war route different from the trade route?
वॉर रूट ओके सो अगर हम वॉर रूट की बात करते हैं तो वॉर्स तो हमने देखा कि हमेशा नॉर्थ ईस्ट की उधर से होती नॉर्थ वेस्ट से हमारी वॉर्स होती थी लेकिन जो नेवी है वो हमारी डेक्कन पार्ट में जो हमारा ट्रेड होता था वो हमारा डेक्कन पार्ट से होता था डेक्कन पार्ट ऑफ इंडिया से तो ये दोनों अलग कॉन्सेप्ट हो गए नेवी का अलग और वॉर्स का अलग.
Okay, thank you so much, Miss Swati.
Thank you, Swati. It's such a fascinating talk. I really thank you for covering, right from ancient and coming down to medieval period. It's been very interesting. I thoroughly enjoyed the talk. Uh, there are a few quick interventions which I want to make. One, regarding one question of Navy, you have coins from Satavahanas, and that shows that they kept maintain this naval force was there during Satavahanas, and also in South India, constantly you have South Indian rulers which have constantly maintained and gave much emphasis on navy, all because of geographical locations and all. There are two things which I wanted to bring to your notice. One is, regarding elephant and horses. Elephant, earlier it has been, you have many texts, Indian texts, that Sanskrit texts that gave emphasis on elephant. An elephant has been very important tool of warfare. Kautilya particularly gave much emphasis on the elephant, and the Kautilya's Arthashastra explicitly states that if you have abundance of elephant, you can win the war. I mean, warfare. It was one of the major source of warfare, and interestingly, we have evidence that suggests that how Seleucus, when he invaded, and there was 500 elephants were gifted to the Greek rulers as a kind of diplomacy or kind of exchange that took place. You have Romans that also adopted elephant as one of the important means of warfare, and then you have Carthaginian state war with Roman state. Hannibal, you all have no, you must have acquainted with Hannibal. Hannibal used elephant army. So elephant has been constantly, used as one of the major warfare. Regarding horse, horses were not very good quality, and they, uh, particularly in early medieval or roughly around 11th to 12th century, what we see that uh, horse were brought up from Central Asia to Indian. Many Indian rulers they prefer to have those horses, and and we have plenty of evidence for that. Ras Tarangani, interestingly, says that the ruler of Kashmir is not able to defend the territory because we don't have great horses, unlike the people, unlike the invaders of Northwest. So there's two very interesting instances we have, and there are horses and elephant having a very recurring theme among war strategist of Indian or war planner of from India. Particularly if you look at Mahabharata, if you look at Manu Smriti, like if you look at Bandhavat and all, so we have plenty of sources for that. Navy, of course, in North India we don't have much reference, but in South, of course, right from Satavahanas, you have plenty of references about all kind of epigraphical and then numismatic as well. So wonderful. I really congratulate you at this level. Your talk was really wonderful, and it was really interesting. Thank you.
Now I would like to call again Miss Jahanvi for telling her topic.
So, firstly, I'd like to congratulate Miss Swati for her successful talk. So, good evening to one and all present here. This is Jahanvi, and currently I'm pursuing BA Honors History, third year from Kalindi College. So, the topic for my talk will be Indian food tales. The motive behind choosing this topic were firstly, food is an integral part of human life. Sentences like roti, kapda, or makan, we are what we eat, clearly suggest that food is interrelated with each and every aspect of human life, be it economic, social, political, religious, etc. Somewhere down the line, we can always relate food with everything. Secondly, we can all agree to some extent that globalization have ruined the dietary practices of present times. So maybe revisiting the history can help for a change. And finally, why shouldn't we talk about food? Especially in an era when food has become highly commercialized. Maybe it can enhance our knowledge on diet by revisiting and knowing how food was perceived and consumed during the earlier ages. So the most basic objectives for my talk will be to spread knowledge about history of Indian food consumption and its practices, origin of vegetarianism, how there is an inseparable link between diet, health, and medicine. And lastly, we'll discuss about the virtues of Indian food because apparently old is gold. So if you find yourself even a little bit interested in this topic, then do grace the event with your delightful presence on 16th of January 2022, that is coming Sunday, and we'll talk about food. Thank you.